With just about 5 months until the full gameplay reveal of Starfield, and 10 months until the release of Starfield, my own and many others' anticipation for this game is beyond immeasurable. The sheer weight of the possibilities that await such a title, whether it is due to its brand new engine, or the fact that it's a brand new IP, the possibilities of Starfield are as limitless as its setting. In this anticipation, I combed through dozens of interviews, articles, other content creators' perspectives, dating all the way back to 2018 and earlier, in order to piece together every bit of information that we know about the game, and to provide to all of you the most definitive, the most up-to-date log of everything we know about Starfield. Whether you've been following the game since before its reveal, or you're looking at Starfield for the very first time, whether your very first Bethesda game dates all the way back to the Elder Scrolls Arena, or you even found a second family, maybe made some new friends among the multiplayer open world of Fallout 76. At the heart of it all, we are united fans of Bethesda games. I hope that you find this informative, entertaining, and exciting as we push ever closer to the release of one of my most anticipated games of this year. I hope to bring you along to share some of the excitement that myself and many others are feeling leading up to one of Bethesda's most ambitious projects of all time. And most of all, I hope to inspire. We are going to cover everything from what exactly Starfield is to the history of the game. We'll cover the lore, the factions, the planets, the technology, and much more. And please, feel free to use the timestamps below to FDL travel to the sections that interest you most. But for now, please, strap yourselves in as we launch ourselves into the Starfield.
It's looking awesome, so we're really confident, like, this is a game we're definitely doing.
Because it's an incredibly ambitious project.
I don't want to overhype it, but I'll just say, I think this is going to be one of the truly most special games made of this generation.
But that game is crazy. Like, it's ambitious and insane and awesome in all of the best possible Bethesda Game Studios ways.
It's the most epic science fiction thing you could possibly imagine.
First announced at E3 2018, Starfield is a game that shows incredible amounts of promise. A next-generation, open-world sci-fi RPG coming from Bethesda Game Studios, the makers of multiple Game of the Year winners, including Oblivion, Fallout 3, and of course, Skyrim. Coming to the Xbox Series consoles, Xbox Game Pass Day 1, and PC, the way we have heard Starfield described is beyond anything we've heard from Bethesda in the past, with some going as far to say that, like Skyrim, Starfield has the potential to be one of the best RPGs of all time. Starfield is Bethesda's first new IP in 25 years. After decades of bouncing between Elder Scrolls and Fallout titles, Todd Howard has stated not only that Bethesda has wanted to create a game in the sci-fi genre for a long time, but also
something we feel uniquely positioned to pull off.
The aspirations for this title from Todd Howard himself is that Starfield,
You know, it's the end-all be-all science fiction game that everyone's always wanted to play. Well, we could be the ones to pull this off.
Whether it's from the technology, including an upgraded engine, the talent with some developers who have been with Bethesda for over 2 decades, or even the financial backing and the bandwidth that comes from Microsoft after Bethesda's recent acquisition. Starfield is consistently described.
It is a universe, not just a game.
And it's Todd Howard's own passion to make this experience as incredible as he can that fills me with confidence in the title. A passion that no doubt is what led the Elder Scrolls franchise to all of the glory and the renown that is earned today. and idealistically, a passion that will do the same for Starfield, and then some. Beyond that, Starfield is in fact a single-player only RPG, with more in common with past Bethesda titles than that of Fallout 76, which will undoubtedly come as good news to many fans of BGS games. Although we may see some signs of social elements within the game, it's unconfirmed in what capacity they may appear, or if they will be in the final game at all. But we'll discuss more on that later. What I can say, however, is that Starfield is meant to be one of the biggest leap forwards since that of Morrowind to Oblivion. But according to Camelworks, one Bethesda employee even went as far to say that Starfield
is the biggest leap in gaming ever.
In short, Starfield very well could be an example of everything that Bethesda Studios can and will be in the future after Starfield releases. Needless to say that Starfield is one of Bethesda's biggest, most ambitious games that they have ever made, and one that to this day, I'm still not sure if we're truly ready for it. Starfield was first announced in 2018, although fans have known about the game as early as 2013 due to a trademark being filed which Todd Howard knew would open the floodgates to speculation. And he was right. Immediately after, fans began pouring deeper into these trademarks. They looked closely at job postings in order to uncover exactly what Starfield could possibly be. But it wouldn't be until 5 years later that we would get our first glimpse, and we'd only see a teaser trailer at that. One that created more questions than it actually answered. Despite the fact that Starfield will be Bethesda's first release sci-fi title, it is not Bethesda's first attempt to venture into the sci-fi genre. Years ago, in 1994, Bethesda was experimenting with a game called The 10th Planet, in which an alien species used an unknown 10th planet in our solar system as a staging ground to conquer Earth by any means necessary. The 10th Planet went through multiple revisions before the project was ultimately killed, as there just wasn't a game there, it's been said. Now, Starfield can potentially live on as the 10th Planet's spiritual successor, and possibly for the better, as nobody back then could have envisioned just how far games would evolve, or how large Bethesda themselves would grow to become. Bethesda, which after the release of The Elder Scrolls Redguard had hit an all-time low with only 7 remaining employees on the brink of bankruptcy. And yet now, it's a studio that has grown to well over 400 employees all working on Starfield together. And it has become a studio winning more Game of the Year awards than any other development team. As the saying goes, everything happens for a reason. Todd Howard also had pitched a Star Trek game in the early 2000s, although this also never came to fruition. So while Starfield isn't Bethesda's first foray into sci-fi, it is positioned to be their best attempt yet, fueled by years of ideas and a desire to build such a title, fueled by the desire to branch away into a brand new universe that they get to create from the ground up, fueled by the possibilities brought by exploring the furthest reaches of space and trying to answer life's greatest mysteries when we look up at the stars. Regardless of the performance of Starfield commercially, the amount of passion that will be thrown into this game is going to be nothing short of remarkable. When it is said that Starfield is 25 years in the making, it's a culmination of these past attempts, the growth and development of some of these long-standing ideas, the advancement of technology, the studio's experience, and all of the years of Bethesda making the most successful RPGs of all time that makes Starfield what it's going to be. Todd Howard has always wanted to do more than just fantasy, and the next step was post-apocalyptic, which they accomplished when they acquired Fallout. After that, sci-fi. And now the technology is finally at a place where Todd Howard and the team feel as though they can create a world which truly transports players to another universe. You can see the amount of detail present in the teaser trailer, from each and every button having a purpose to the actual ignition sequence being accurate to how it would really work. all of the pieces are finally in place for Bethesda to execute the dream project they've always wanted to make. Starfield takes place in the year 2330, about 50 light years away from our very own star system, in a region of space that is now known as the Settled Systems. 20 years before the start of the game, the two largest factions, the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective, engaged in a brutal war known as the Colony Wars. Historians never had creative naming in their job descriptions. Although they are now settled in an uneasy peace, and one that we as a player may have the ability to change the balance of, human threats still plague the Settled Systems. Multiple factions, which we will discuss in greater detail later on, including ecliptic mercenaries and religious zealots of House Faroon, among many others, pose an ever-present danger to those living in the colonies. Every decade of Starfield's timeline has been documented, including wars, technological advancements, and more. Events that we will no doubt be able to read through audio or video logs, or books scattered across the world of Starfield. And developers share these notes between one another as they create the world of Starfield, all with the final goal of making a world that seems like it could actually exist. Possibly in a neighboring universe, if you believe in infinite timelines, that is. The technology has been extensively researched, answering questions like, how does communication work across these great expanses in a realistic fashion? Outside of the time and the location, Starfield takes place in a realistic future deemed as NASA-punk. And to describe NASA-punk, I don't think I could phrase it any better than Reddit user Land of the Free, who explains it by stating, quote, "There was a real magic to the idea of spaceflight in the Cold War era. We were trapped on a planet on the brink of Armageddon, and these madmen signed up to be fired into the void itself to go somewhere incredible, unattainable. And they did it. Men like Gargarin, Armstrong, and Aldrin really went out there, supported by mathematical theories written by hand and powered by computers no smarter than a digital watch. This isn't some campy sci-fi film with ridiculous monsters made out of paper mache. This was the real deal. It spawned a whole new variant of hard sci-fi built off a real-life aesthetic and more faithful to the real science that made it feel possible, attainable, just around the corner for us. NASA-punk aims to capture that same feeling, traveling through the endless expanse of space beyond what we are possibly capable of." End quote. When discussing the tone of Starfield, Todd mentions that traveling in space in our game, I wanted to say it's like flight in the 40s. It's dangerous. It's still dangerous to go and explore, even though lots of people do it. To me, it's an age in which the feats we're accomplishing are way beyond that of what the technology should conceivably allow, and yet humanity continues to make the impossible a reality. It takes place in a universe that Bethesda is attempting to make so realistic. They've actually researched how startup sequences on ships would realistically work. Take a look at this.
After we saw the asset,
I know where you're going.
Matt Booty sent this email to Todd Howard and copied P to myself. I'm just going to read it. I noticed that when the pilot starts the pre-ignition sequence, he doesn't purge the auxiliary back pressure tanks until after the fuel pump spins up. You can see him throw the switches to engage the EGT and the oil cooler over tip monitors, but no Axe BP tank purge. Took me out of the moment a bit.
But what's even better is Todd's response.
Yeah, good catch, but he actually throws a, quote, flight check override at 120 to cover that, and he puts in prints, yes, for real. So, like...
We thought of that. We knew what we were doing in the startup sequence.
So good.
And we actually have accounted for that. Both that Booty would even think to notice that, and then Todd, knowing that we had already accounted for that, and it was, in fact, authentic, is, I think, part and parcel of the detail that goes into these games to make them feel like this is a real place. I mean, you heard Todd to start the show says, look, it's about it's the transportive ability of video games. And it's really tough to transport somebody if the rules of the world don't feel believable.
Bethesda has visited SpaceX to see how this technology would be possible and what would be required to make it happen. The lead writer, Emil Pagliuolo, has taken a week-long crash course in an astronomy workshop. And they've researched everything from fuel sources to gravitational forces to make the world of Starfield feel authentic. to make it feel like it's not just a game but another reality which we could live in, which is what Bethesda thinks is so incredible about their games, and one of the major reasons why gamers fall in love with Bethesda's worlds as much as we do. It's worth mentioning that these examples are just a few of the ones we actually know about. If all of the little details that hardcore fans have spotted in the teaser trailer serve as a microcosm of what we can expect from the greater game, it may just be one of the most immersive worlds in gaming, period. And maybe I'm thinking a bit too far ahead here, but if we can expect this much detail in the first game, where everything about the game must be built from the ground up and all of that time must be spent learning and creating just the foundational elements of the game, just think of what can be achieved in a potential sequel when all of these foundational details are already covered. When the only thing that the writing team needs to think about isn't how gravity would affect a ship traveling at faster than light speed, but instead solely focusing on the story that they want to tell. So, what is the setting of Starfield? Well, in some ways, it's potentially our very own future. Perhaps our longest section, despite the least amount known of Starfield's gameplay, is one of the more crucial elements of Starfield's success. Although we likely won't learn more until the game is shown at E3 2022, there are some details that we can piece together based on interviews given by Todd Howard and the rest of the team. Starting off, we know that each planet will have its own day-night cycle, something that is present in most Bethesda titles, and something that Todd Howard says adds to the believability of their worlds. That you can choose to wander and watch the sunset rather than taking on any quests or clearing out dungeons. Whether the time of day will have an effect on gameplay directly is yet to be seen, although it remains a possibility. Starfield is also meant to take on more of an hardcore RPG approach, although it's not entirely clear which elements of an RPG he's referring to. Todd has mentioned that backgrounds are an exciting new feature which add to the experience by creating unique events based on which you pick. Although speculation, it's possible that your starting location, equipment, even alliances could shift based on the background you choose. Conversely, it's also possible that your background may initially only have an effect on your starting skills, while more character developing moments may occur later on in the playthrough. More hardcore RPG mechanics can also refer to some survival mechanics, as gamers have recognized an oxygen display in some HUD elements of the game that have leaked in the past. They may also relate to an increase in dialogue choices that have deeper consequence on the relationships that you develop across the game, or maybe dramatically change your mentality when it comes to quest progression. Speaking of quests, more hardcore role-playing mechanics could be in reference to increasing the number of ways a player could go about completing them. Maybe more consequences later in the game. Maybe a non-lethal option that allows players to take advantage of capturing NPCs rather than outright killing them. Better AI reactivity is a system which Todd Howard frequently mentions could be improved in their games, and perhaps this may play a role as well, as it can potentially affect how you choose to go about playing the game if you're aware that different actions will have severe consequences, causing you to really dive into the mindset of a particular character you're playing, and how they might tackle a problem. Or maybe it's more in the leveling system of the game. Speaking of leveling, Todd mentions that the skill system is really like the skill system in Skyrim and borrows ideas from Fallout. If it does in fact lean more towards Skyrim's system, it's likely we will see a return of the perk system. We might also guess that the game will feature a mechanic like Skyrim, in which you level up skills based on what you use rather than manually placing points in various skill trees. When things do go south and combat is necessary, we can expect improved gunplay from what we had in Fallout 4. Bethesda's partner studios helped develop the combat in Fallout 4, and it's likely that they will do the same here if it's necessary, in order to make sure that the action parts of the game are at least on par, if not better, than other modern shooter titles. Todd Howard also mentions that the game structure is very similar to that of Skyrim, even going as far as saying that it's Skyrim in space in all of the best ways. However, he also mentions that the mechanics are entirely different. Although this quote has been interpreted in a number of ways, it's clear that the structure he is referring to is mainly the way Skyrim allows you to play as any character you want, forging your own path in the game. Contrarily, Fallout 4 places you in the role of Nate or Nora, a war veteran, and a lawyer respectively, both of which have the main objective of finding their stolen child. It may also be reflecting the decision for Bethesda to return to a silent protagonist, which many fans attribute to providing an overall better role-playing experience compared to that of Fallout 4. Todd Howard has also mentioned in the past how the voice protagonist did not work as well as they had hoped, although nothing regarding a voiced or unvoiced player character has been confirmed thus far. When discussing the gameplay of Starfield, it's also worth mentioning the possibility of a social element in the game, which has been briefly mentioned in the past. Fans have long speculated about what this could possibly mean, and how it may be implemented. Some speculate that it might come solely in the form of a companion app to the game. Others ponder the possibility of creating settlements similar to that of Fallout 4, which can be shared and downloaded by other players and added to their own universes. It's also possible that this is something that the team might have been thinking of at one point, but may end up as cut content before the game releases. We do know that Starfield will feature a much deeper emphasis on exploration, a point that has been made time and time again across multiple different interviews. Matt Corafano, art director at Bethesda Game Studios, explains that Starfield is like the ultimate exploration. The last things about gameplay involve some of the mechanics that might change how you go about experiencing Starfield. Pilotable vehicles are still a widely discussed subject with no definitive official answer. Starfield will be playable in third and first person. Gravity may have an effect on gameplay, and low gravity or zero-G gameplay may have a role at different parts in the game, although I would be surprised if you didn't become spaced at some section of the game, requiring you to deal with zero gravity directly. Other more specific factors of gameplay like customization, the factions you can join, even mods we will discuss in more detail in just a little bit. Settlement building was one of the better received additions to Bethesda titles, with its earliest conception being in Skyrim's Hearthfire DLC, and later being fully fledged in Fallout 4 and improved again in Fallout 76. With Starfield, while no official confirmation has been given, it is likely that we will see a return of the settlement system with greater improvements. It is possible that players will be able to build not just multiple settlements, but entire colonies in which players can send NPCs in the game to live at. Improvements to the settlement system, such as what Sim Settlements was able to accomplish, where settlements could be built and expanded by NPCs rather than solely relying on the player, are possible, although no such feature has been confirmed, or even whether or not a settlement system will return in any capacity, for that matter. Players should expect a more robust character creation system, although the idea of playable alien races has been largely disproved at this point. Starfield does appear to be a human-centric story, and while the possibility of sentient alien life remains a possibility, and may even be the majority of the mystery of the game we're trying to solve, is whether or not we're alone in the universe. There's no indication to how or in what form this might be handled. An evolution of Bethesda's typical character creation systems should be expected, ideally including more hairstyles, tattoo options, facial hair, scars, maybe even futuristic prosthetics and body types. We do know that there is a they-them option in Starfield, and all dialogue has been recorded to accommodate these pronouns. Further on, ship customization, although also unconfirmed, will likely make an appearance in the game. A survey from around May of 2021 asked players if they spend a lot of time customizing homes, characters, or spaceships. Being able to customize your ship would be a natural feature for a game like Starfield, especially given the emphasis and detail that Bethesda has been giving ships across all of their marketing and concept art. Starships will possibly be able to be customized in the same way that power armor was in Fallout 4, with various parts being interchangeable to fit the player's desired aesthetic. Whether it will also affect the ship's functionality is yet to be seen, as we have no clear indication whether players will be piloting ships in Starfield. In addition to settlement building and ship crafting, weapon and armor customization will likely be returning to Starfield in greater capacity, with armor pieces being completely customizable, similar to what we saw in Fallout 4. Based on the concept art that we've seen, it does seem as though players will have an underlying base layer of armor or spacesuit that they will then be able to layer over with additional pieces of gear from different sets. So you may choose the Bounty Hunter spacesuit, for example, but then have that layered with heavy, medium, or light variants of different pieces of armor, such as shoulder pads, gloves, chest armor, and more. Although this too is just speculation. Starfield is planned to release on November 11th, 2022. The studio says that it is confident in meeting that release date, otherwise they would have not showcased it in the most recent in-game trailer. However, they also acknowledge that anything is possible. Starfield is not the kind of game that Bethesda would rush, and if necessary, a delay could occur. Starfield is utilizing an upgraded version of the Creation Engine, however, it's an overhaul so drastic that it is worthy of a new name: the Creation Engine 2.0. The Creation Engine 2.0 will feature many improvements from what we've seen in the past, with Bethesda specifically stating that it is the largest jump since Morrowind to Oblivion. Some of the highlights of the new engine include improved AI, better pathing, motion and facial capture, improved animation, new lighting techniques, ray tracing, 4K capability, better procedural generation, and the ability to leverage the power of SSDs in modern consoles. One of the biggest complaints in Bethesda games is the amount of bugs that are frequently present. Will the upgrade to the Creation Engine solve these issues? Possibly, and possibly not. It is an evolution of the Creation Engine, but making a new engine also creates a new set of problems that the studio will have to learn and be able to fix with experience using the Creation Engine 2.0. Additionally, if Starfield is as ambitious and more specifically as large of a game as it's being claimed, bug testing and QA is an arduous and ongoing process, and fixing one bug usually introduces 2 new bugs to fix, and with a game Starfield size, that's going to be a lot of bugs. That's not to say that Starfield will release as an unpolished experience, as Bethesda is aware of the memes surrounding their buggy releases, and I'm sure they will put in every effort to minimize the amount of game-breaking bugs at launch. But it would be ridiculous to say that fans and players should not expect at least a few. Most of Starfield's story isn't known, and even with the full reveal, it's likely much will still be left to the imagination. As far as story details go, Starfield is a traditional BGS game in which you can be who you want and explore what you want. Players will have the opportunity to join a multitude of factions, speculatively ranging from seedy criminal underworld gangs to upstanding military organizations. It is likely you'll be able to side with at least one of the 2 major factions in the game, the United Colonies or the Freestar Collective, but more on that later. We do know that you begin as one of the newest members of Constellation, one of the last group of space explorers, as you set to uncover some of life's greatest mysteries. Are we alone? What is the origin of the universe? What role does religion play in our future among the stars? It is also expected that you will be discovering the purpose of some unknown alien technology seen in the trailer. It's possible that this tech was discovered before the game takes place and is responsible for humanity's breakthrough to faster-than-light travel, explaining why we are able to jump across the stars. Starfield, as we know, is largely about exploration and forging your own path among the stars. Every player's journey is likely to be unique, from the followers they bring along to the factions you decide to fight alongside, to the very fate of the settled systems. While the main story of Starfield will be up to each player to discover for themselves, it is up to them how, and if, they decide to pursue it, in traditional Bethesda Game Studios fashion. Starfield does feature 3 times more dialogue than Skyrim, sitting at about 150,000 lines of dialogue. This could give players a rough estimate on how large the game might be when it comes to the quantity of quests to pursue, or the depth of them. Starfield is said to have 2 step-out moments, akin to that moment where you step out of the Oblivion dungeon for the first time, or you walk into the world of Fallout after leaving Vault 101. My speculation is that these moments will include the opening of the game in which you land on your first planet, and the moment that you arrive in the settled systems. Factions in Starfield have been described by Todd Howard as being really similar to that of Skyrim. It's possible this means that you can join any faction you want without any type of negative affinity towards other factions. It may also mean the way they are structured and how their stories and progression are handled. Alternatively, it may be in a more literal sense, where you have a fighter guild type faction, a thieves guild, an assassination guild, and so on. We do know some of the major factions in the game and also some minor ones, like corporations that have appeared in concept art. The Freestar Collective, for example, is a loose confederation of 3 distinct star systems and has a capital based on Aquila City, a walled sanctuary for those who value individual freedom above all else. They are one of the major combatants in the colony wars that took place in the year 2310. The United Colonies, the largest and most militaristic faction in the settled systems, naming New Atlantis as its capital city. A cultural melting pot of races, creeds, and ethnicities, and one of the pinnacles of what humanity can achieve among the stars. The United Colonies faced off against the Freestar Collective in the Colony Wars. Within the United Colonies exists a subgroup called MAST, or Military, Administrative, and Scientific Triumvirate. The United Colonies possibly has one of the largest fleets in the settled systems, with many generals and military leaders including Pasquale Logan and Kibwe Akande, 2 characters we will likely meet in Starfield. The Crimson Fleet, a group of pirate captains organized under a Jolly Roger emblem. Organizationally, the Crimson Fleet isn't considered a single entity or faction, but rather a wide range of unique captains that operate individually with similar motives. The Xenofresh Corporation is a fishing company that built the city of Neon, originally a fishing platform on a non-remarkable aquatic world. The corporation quickly discovered there was fish that produced a chemical called Aurora that had psychoactive properties. This opened Neon up to the public and gave the city the name of being a pleasure city, one of vice and profit, but notably popular. Finally, for the major factions, there's Constellation, an organization that is dedicated to uncovering the mysteries of the universe, known and unknown, and one of the last of its kind. We, the player, begin as the newest member of Constellation, working to solve the key to unlocking everything. Other known factions include Ecliptic Mercenaries, Spacers, and House of Rune, 3 presumed enemy types. Multiple defense contractors including SysDef, short for System Defense, Sidonia Security, and the Vanguard also exist. Axion Energy, Ryujin Industries, Combatech, and Nova Galactic are also a few responsible for the likes of energy, weapons, and ship manufacturing. It can be presumed that we will see a wide range of factions with similar motives or products, with multiple large governments interacting with one another, each having their own unique needs. So far, we have 3 confirmed planets in Starfield, and while their names are unknown, the cities on each of them are Neon, New Atlantis, and Aquila. It is possible that these will be the only explorable planets in the game, which would allow for Bethesda to make each of them large enough in size to remain vast and filled with exploration, while also being able to fill them with engaging content to discover, including dungeons, caves, and so on. Procedural generation will play a greater role than ever before in allowing Bethesda to make larger maps despite the game taking place across multiple planets. The extent of which procedural generation will be used is still widely discussed. Whether or not Starfield will utilize No Man's Sky level of generating planets, or remain with smaller handcrafted worlds, is up for debate, although my personal guess is the latter. In any case, players can expect to explore a diverse range of worlds, some of which have been shown in concept art, such as lush jungle environments to desert-like areas to fungus-covered caves. Creative and alien worlds is something that Bethesda has in some ways lacked since Morrowind released years ago. Now, they have an opportunity to build some of the most incredible and engaging worlds we could possibly imagine. Regarding cities, Todd Howard has previously mentioned how the small villages in Skyrim that pass for cities are underwhelming. Looking at concept art from the likes of New Atlantis, we can see much wider streets and larger buildings than that of Skyrim's concept art, which leads me to believe that Todd's vision of creating larger cities in-game is going to be fully realized in Starfield, although this too remains unconfirmed. During interviews, Todd Howard has mentioned that he would like to have games that last for 10 years, with the same success that Skyrim has had. In this, he recognizes additional content provided from the likes of the modding community and the Creation Club are essential to keeping the lifespan of the game. Creation Club creators in particular, Bethesda has hired quite a few of, allowing them the opportunity to make future games as a developer and not just a fan. It is undeniable that the setting of Starfield sets the stage for some of the most interesting mods that we may yet see in a Bethesda game, and with Bethesda openly providing mod tools to the community to make their own creations, the possibility of mods waiting to be made will be an incredible sight to see. The vast expanse of space as their canvas, the possibilities of what can be implemented will be limited only by the creators' imaginations. You can see there's so much information that we already know, and yet so much more just waiting to be discovered, and I'm sure that I've missed some bits out. If you consider yourself to be a Starfield lore guru, please correct me down about certain things in the comment section below, or leave more information that I might have missed. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do leave a like if you found it at all informative or exciting, and a comment is always appreciated. As always, I hope to see you all among the Starfield.